If you're one of those people who spend the week looking forward to the weekend, and then spend the weekend dreading the thought of Monday, the rest of this article should give you even more cause to pull the covers over your head come Monday morning. Strange as it might sound, across all age groups there are significantly more deaths from coronary heart disease on Mondays than on any other day of the week. Scottish researchers brought together their results from Scottish morbidity records, gathered between 1986 and 1995. The group most seriously at risk seems to be men and women under 50, who have not previously been hospitalized for heart disease. 20% more of this age group died on Monday than on any other day. What's interesting is that the die on Monday trend does not seem to hold true for those who died of coronary heart disease in hospital, or for heart patients who had previously been hospitalized. Researchers believe that these groups may be partly protected from sudden cardiac death, because they are already under treatment. It may also be that they are more likely to seek medical help at the weekend, because they are familiar with the symptoms, sort of a case of once bitten twice shy, as the saying goes. The study is only the latest in a very long line of research, showing that Monday is a dark day for health and happiness. Similar statistics have emerged in the past from other countries such as Russia, Germany, and the United States. On an even more morbid note, Monday has also been shown to be the peak day for suicides. But as yet, no one knows why. One theory regarding Monday heart attacks is that many people engage in weekend binge drinking. That is, they drink considerably more over the weekend than they do during the week. As a result, they put extra, often unbearable strain on their hearts, especially when they go into alcohol withdrawal as the week begins. This is supported by the fact that emergency admissions for alcohol-related problems peak on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Researchers feel that if there is a link between binge drinking and coronary episodes, it has potentially important public health implications. Certainly, it is an area that merits immediate further investigation. It's also been proposed that the surge of post-weekend work-related stress may be to blame. Several studies lend credence to this possibility, in that the Morbid Monday effect seems to pertain primarily to the working population.
We live on a blue planet, 2/3 of which is covered by water. Yet many political forecasters predict that, during the 21st century, shortages of water are going to become a major source of international tension. The sad fact is that we have grossly mismanaged the Earth's water supply. Take agriculture, for example, which is by far the most significant way that we use water. Between 70 and 80% of the water withdrawn globally is used to irrigate fields. But irrigation is fantastically wasteful. It is estimated that only 40% or so of all irrigation water gets to where it is needed. Most farmers use traditional and very inefficient methods of irrigation. Modern methods such as drip irrigation deliver water exactly where it is needed, and in exactly the right amount. But such systems are costly to install. And because water for agriculture is heavily subsidized in many countries, there is no incentive for farmers to economize on the amount of water they use. What's worse, over-irrigation is not only wasteful, but potentially damaging for the soil. If soil becomes waterlogged and the water table rises, salts from deep in the ground are carried to the surface, where they can form a crust when the water evaporates. This salty soil is then infertile, a problem called salinization. And that's only irrigation. We also need to consider the problems caused by factory emissions, fertilizer runoff, the draining of wetlands, and the building of great dams for hydroelectric power. The good news is that the paradigm in water management is slowly shifting. In the past, there was often a blind faith in large-scale hydroengineering projects, which meant the building of massive dams. But there is a sense now that the era of such ventures is at an end. The Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River in China has made it clear how controversial, and most of all, impractically expensive such solutions can be. Instead of continuing to engage in such projects, there is now a growing recognition that the answer lies not in finding more water, but in making better use of what we already have. In developed countries, many industries are already recycling the water they need largely for cooling rather than discharging it after one round of use. This is in everyone's interest, as it lowers an industrial plant's water bill, sometimes by as much as 90%. It also reduces the stress on local resources and cuts pollution. Water recycling can also be applied to municipal water use. Instead of regarding sewage as waste, for example, it can be transformed into nutrient-rich irrigation water with only relatively light treatment. 70% of the domestic water discharged from communities in Israel is now used for irrigation. Sewage farming may sound unappealing, but it makes great ecological sense. At present, desalinization, the removal of salt from seawater, is very expensive, mainly because it consumes so much energy. Currently, it provides less than 0.2% of all the water used in the world. But cheap and efficient solar power could, if it becomes feasible, make a big difference.
There's been a lot of attention in the media recently about the dangers facing students and teachers in school science labs. What started it off was a horrible accident that occurred during a routine experiment in a high school chemistry class in Genoa, Illinois. 1 second the teacher was at the front of the lab mixing chemicals, and the next an alcohol-fueled fireball shot through the classroom, seriously burning 3 students in the front row. As the teacher pulled burning jeans off of one of the girls, the rest of the class scrambled for the door, leaving burning backpacks and books behind. This wasn't an isolated event. Some terrible accidents have occurred. In California, for instance, the school's excess liability fund reports that they recently paid claims of $1 million and more than $3 million in 2 cases involving chemistry lab accidents. A settlement is pending in a third involving a girl who was burned over 20% of her body. And according to interviews with researchers, school officials and insurance companies, it appears that the stage is set for a significant increase. It all boils down to the fact that schools are trying to meet tough new science education standards that were recently set by the National Academy of Sciences. In the past, most students got their chemistry from textbooks, but now students are spending more time doing experiments in science labs. This is because the standards advocate hands-on, inquiry-based science. And that's where the problems start. Some labs are crowded, and some are run by teachers with no safety training. And some are in old buildings that are ill-equipped for 21st century science. Unfortunately, there is no government or private agency that collects official data on this kind of thing. But the state of Iowa, which adopted an early version of the standards more than 10 years ago, has done some research and the statistics are telling. In the 3 school years before the new standards were introduced, schools around the state reported 674 accidents. In the 3 years following the introduction of the standards, more than 1,000 accidents were reported, more than a 30% increase. The number of lawsuits related to these accidents also soared from 96 in the 3 years before the standards were set, to 245 in the 3 years following. If accurate statistics were gathered around the country, we'd find the actual numbers would be much higher. As unpleasant as it is to admit, it's the kind of problem nobody wants to face. Experts say that almost all of the lab accidents and injuries that we know about could have been prevented with simple safety measures. But a high percentage of science teachers have never had safety training. In North Carolina, for example, a recent study has revealed that more than 70% of North Carolina science teachers had never received safety training. Surveys in 17 other states found an average of 55 to 65% of teachers have not had safety training. So, our first priority needs to be providing teachers with the safety training they need. We also need to ensure that all labs are provided with appropriate safety equipment. A typical scenario is that teachers do not have or bother to use an exhaust system. Then they might leave the cap off an alcohol jug or pour too much alcohol into the dishes. In such cases, fumes can build up. When the fumes are exposed to flame, they can create a flash fire. We can safely assume that if teachers were trained to follow a few simple safety procedures, then fewer accidents might occur. For starters, having and using an exhaust system is an absolute must. Injuries can also be minimized if teachers use a plastic shield and require their students to wear goggles. Teachers also need to learn how to store chemicals safely, and to know which chemicals can cause dangerous reactions if they accidentally mix, or are allowed to sit on the shelf for too long. It is unclear if teacher training alone will make the labs safer, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Other things must also be done, like getting the state and federal governments to become more actively involved. Aside from eye protection requirements, too few laws are aimed specifically at the safety of students, and those that do exist are usually not strictly enforced. Lawmakers can start by passing laws that oblige school labs to undergo regular safety inspections. They can also require that all accidents, no matter how minor, be reported to a centralized agency that will accurately track and report on the problem. This way, science educators will be able to learn from the mistakes of their colleagues.